Imagine standing at the crossroads of history, where words can inspire, challenge, and awaken a generation. In this story, Minister Louis Farrakhan takes us on a journey into the life and teachings of Elijah Muhammad, a man whose ideas sparked fear, controversy, and misunderstanding. And misunderstands. For decades, many dismissed or misinterpreted his words, never fully grasping the depth of his vision for empowerment, discipline, and unity. But Farrakhan urges us to look closer, to see beyond the surface, and to understand the truth that has been hidden from public view. From the very first moment, you'll feel the intensity of a message that refuses to be ignored. Farrakhan challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths, to question the narratives we've been told, and to recognize the strength and wisdom embedded in teachings often labeled as radical. This isn't just historians a call to awareness, a wake-up to the power of understanding, and a reminder that the path to unity and growth begins with knowledge. As we explore Elijah Muhammad's impact, Farrakhan shines a light on the lessons meant for a new generation. Lessons about leadership, community, and resilience in the face of adversity. He reminds us that the fear surrounding these teachings often says more about society's resistance to change than the ideas themselves. Through careful reflection, we can move past old conflicts and embrace the wisdom that can guide us toward building stronger, more connected communities. If you want to uncover the truth, challenge what you think you know, and witness a perspective that has shaped a movement, stay with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss a single moment of this journey into one of the most powerful and misunderstood speeches of our time. In the heart of Farrakhan's message lies a perspective that challenges the way we often perceive struggle and suffering. He paints a picture of hardship, not as a cruel punishment or an arbitrary misfortune, but as a carefully designed form of spiritual training, a crucible in which the individual and the community are refined, strengthened, and prepared for responsibilities far greater than immediate comfort or convenience. He speaks of trials not merely as obstacles to endure, but as instruments through which character, vision, and resilience are forged, shaping a people capable of navigating the complexities of a world that often seems indifferent or even hostile to their advancement. Farrakhan invites his listeners to imagine the life of a community beset by countless challenges, where each difficult loss of a loved one, the betrayal of trust, the weight of systemic injustice, the temptation of harmful choice carries within it the potential for growth if approached with insight and patience. He frames these moments as lessons delivered by a higher wisdom, much like the guidance of a teacher, whose methods may appear harsh to the untrained eye, yet are rooted in a foresight that perceives outcomes generations ahead. Just as a sculptor chips away at marble to reveal the form within, adversity shapes the contours of a people, carving them into individuals capable of leadership, unity, and stewardship of their own destiny. Through this lens, Farrakhan interprets historical and contemporary struggles as a continuum, where each setback or apparent defeat is a stepping stone toward a larger purpose. The collapse of institutions, the failures of leadership, the personal disappointments all are reframed not as signs of irrelevance, but as parts of a divine strategy in which preparation precedes triumph. He recounts the examples of great figures within the Nation of Islam, the sacrifices of those who endured public scorn, and the unseen lessons embedded in experiences that tested loyalty, patience, and faith. Each story becomes a testament to the idea that suffering, when met with discipline and reflection, is neither wasted nor meaningless. It is the soil in which the seeds of a stronger, wiser, and more resilient community take root. Farrakhan emphasizes that this form of spiritual training extends beyond the individual, reaching into the collective consciousness of a people. The hardships endured by one generation prepare the next to claim their power with purpose and vision. The losses of the past, when analyzed and understood, provide clarity for decision-making, strategy, and moral courage in the present. In this way, struggle becomes not just a personal trial but a shared legacy, a lesson passed along like a torch that illuminates the path to liberation, unity, and self-determination. He reminds his audience that to ignore or resent these trials is to miss the opportunity they contain. By embracing the lessons inherent in difficulty, by recognizing that pain is a form of guidance rather than condemnation, a community becomes capable of transformation, able to rise above the forces that would keep it divided, powerless, or passive. Farrakhan's words resonate as a call to perceive the hidden purpose behind every challenge, to see in hardship the shaping of not only character but of destiny itself, and to understand that the trials endured today are the preparation for the triumphs of tomorrow. Through his narrative, suffering is reframed as a sacred tool, hardship becomes a teacher, and the people emerge not as victims of circumstance, but as architects of their own liberation, sculpted by experience, refined by struggle, and prepared to wield power responsibly for the collective uplift of the generations to come. It is a vision of endurance and enlightenment, one that transforms pain into purpose and guides a community toward the realization of its fullest potential. Farrakhan's message extends beyond the trials of life and the shaping of character, reaching into the very habits that define daily existence, where the choices of what one consumes become inseparable from the cultivation of clarity, strength, and spiritual awareness. He speaks of diet not merely as a matter of health or preference, but as a critical link between the body and the mind, between physical vitality and the capacity for disciplined thought and purposeful action. In his view, the foods one ingests carry consequences far beyond the immediate sense of satisfaction or hunger, influencing the subtle rhythms of consciousness and the clarity with which an individual perceives the world. He warns passionately against the consumption of pork and other foods he frames as detrimental, describing them as substances that cloud judgment, erode self-discipline, and dull the inner senses that connect a person to higher purpose, suggesting that neglecting these warnings can make the struggle for growth far more arduous than it needs to be. He recounts the experiences of those within the community who embraced disciplined eating as a form of self-respect and spiritual alignment, illustrating how deliberate choices about food reinforced not only physical strength but also moral and intellectual resilience. Each meal becomes a lesson in mindfulness, an opportunity to honor the body as the vessel through which the mind and spirit operate, and a reminder that the ease with which one can navigate life's trials is intimately tied to the care with which one tends to oneself. The consumption of unhealthy or spiritually corrosive foods, Farrakhan argues, to this indeed, is more than a matter of poor nutrition. It is a subtle surrender of the body to forces that dull perception, foster lethargy, and weaken the resolve needed to endure and transcend hardship. In this sense, eating becomes a practice of discipline, a daily test of one's commitment to self-mastery, clarity, and readiness to meet the challenges that life imposes. Through his storytelling, he links the lessons of struggle and spiritual training with the necessity of mindful consumption, showing that both are elements of a broader philosophy of preparation and resilience. Just as adversity shapes character and community, so too does the careful selection of what nourishes the body influence the sharpness of the mind and the alignment of the spirit. He describes how communities that neglected these principles often found themselves weakened, more susceptible to division, and less able to respond with intelligence and unity to external pressures, whereas those who approached food as a deliberate, conscious choice discovered a deeper sense of power, focus, and internal harmony. It becomes clear in his narrative that the battles faced in daily life, the hardships endured for growth, and the broader pursuit of collective liberation are inseparable from the daily acts of self-care and self-discipline that begin with something as fundamental as what one chooses to eat. In telling these stories, Farrakhan presents the link between diet and consciousness as both practical and symbolic, a tangible way to understand how the smallest choices resonate across the larger arcs of personal and communal destiny. He illustrates the hidden power within seemingly ordinary acts, showing that discipline over the body fosters discipline over thought, emotion, and action, while indulgence in harmful habits creates subtle barriers to clarity, patience, and insight. This connection between physical nourishment and spiritual readiness transforms the act of eating from a routine necessity into a daily affirmation of purpose and commitment to growth. By framing diet as a key element of spiritual and mental refinement, Farrakhan deepens the narrative of struggle and preparation he has woven, portraying the journey of the individual and community as one that requires vigilance in both the grand trials of life and the intimate moments of daily choice. Every meal, every act of self-discipline, Every rejection of what weakens the mind or body becomes part of the broader tapestry of resilience, clarity, and empowerment. In this way, the teachings on diet become inseparable from the lessons on hardship, spiritual training, and communal strength, revealing a philosophy where physical and spiritual health are intertwined, and where the pursuit of liberation begins at the most fundamental level of conscious living, guiding the mind, body, and soul toward a state capable of endurance, insight, and purposeful action. As Farrakhan moves through the intricate layers of struggle, discipline, and spiritual refinement, he shifts his gaze from the individual to the broader tapestry of community, illuminating the urgent need for reconciliation among Black leaders, movements, and faiths. He paints a picture of a community fractured by historical grievances and misunderstandings, where the echoes of past conflicts between the followers of Elijah Muhammad and those inspired by Malcolm X still reverberate, creating subtle barriers to progress and unity. In his words, these old divisions, though often unspoken, act like unseen chains, restraining the collective strength and clarity of purpose that could otherwise propel the community forward. Farrakhan recounts the stories of personal and organizational rifts, describing moments where pride, hurt, and miscommunication transformed potential collaboration into rivalry, leaving the community vulnerable to external pressures and internal stagnation. He frames these conflicts not as simple matters of disagreement, but as obstacles deeply embedded in identity, belief, and the interpretation of history, suggesting that only by confronting them honestly can true progress be achieved. He interweaves this call for reconciliation with the lessons he has drawn from hardship, spiritual discipline, and mindful living, showing that the same principles guiding personal growth, clarity, patience, and the refinement of character are equally vital in repairing fractured relationships and building communal resilience. Just as the disciplined attention to diet and lifestyle sharpens the mind and strengthens the body, so too does intentional dialogue and the setting aside of pride and grudges strengthen the bonds of a community striving for shared liberation. Farrakhan narrates examples of individuals and groups who have begun to bridge these divides, highlighting the courage it takes to extend forgiveness, acknowledge past mistakes, and create spaces where differing visions of leadership and faith can coexist without eroding collective purpose. He emphasizes that reconciliation is not a passive act, but a conscious, disciplined effort, requiring the same endurance and self-awareness cultivated through personal struggle and spiritual vigilance. Through his storytelling, Farrakhan situates reconciliation within a broader philosophical framework where internal harmony and external readiness are inseparable, showing that communities fractured by unresolved tensions are ill-prepared to meet the challenges of oppression, economic inequality, and social marginalization. He conveys how the lingering animosity between factions not only diminishes collective potential, but also perpetuates cycles of misunderstanding and missed opportunity, while those who actively work toward reconciliation discover renewed energy, strategic cohesion, and a heightened capacity for leadership. By aligning this process with the spiritual and practical lessons previously discussed, he frames reconciliation as an act of empowerment, a deliberate reclaiming of agency that strengthens both the individual and the collective. Farrakhan emphasizes that acknowledging past grievances does not diminish achievement or truth, but instead lays the foundation for trust, shared vision, and enduring collaboration. He challenges his audience to see reconciliation not as a concession, but as a strategic and moral imperative, where old animosities must be transformed into lessons of unity and foresight. In his narrative, this transformation is portrayed as a journey requiring courage and insight, mirroring the internal discipline cultivated through facing hardship, refining character, and maintaining spiritual and physical health. The same attentiveness applied to daily habits and personal struggles becomes the tool by which communities can heal, align, and prepare to confront external challenges with coordinated purpose. Ultimately, Farrakhan presents reconciliation as a keystone for progress, illustrating how the act of bridging divides among leaders, faiths, and movements resonates far beyond symbolic gestures, infusing the community with renewed clarity, collective strength. So, and a sense of destiny shaped not by division, but by deliberate unity. Through his narrative, he portrays a vision of a community capable of enduring adversity, navigating complexity, declent, and advancing together, demonstrating that true liberation is inseparable from the courage to forgive, the discipline to unify, and the insight to turn historical pain into a foundation for shared power and sustained progress. As Farrakhan's discourse weaves through the personal and communal challenges faced by Black communities, he introduces a profound spiritual lens through which to view adversity, drawing on Quranic parables to illustrate how apparent loss or destruction can conceal divine protection and unseen opportunity. He recounts episodes in the history of the Nation of Islam where setbacks, scandals, and periods of decline seemed, at first, like devastating failures. Yet, under careful reflection, these moments reveal themselves as periods of preservation, realignment, and preparation for future strength. In his storytelling, he likens these experiences to the trials faced by prophets and communities in sacred texts, demonstrating that what appears destructive from a surface perspective often serves as a crucible, refining vision, character, and organizational resilience. Through vivid examples, he portrays how leaders and followers alike confronted public criticism, internal disputes, customs and external pressures, and yet emerged with renewed clarity, sharper focus, and a deeper commitment to principles that could withstand both scrutiny and time. Farrakhan narrates this principle with an almost cinematic clarity, describing how a sudden loss of influence or resources can feel catastrophic but, in hindsight, reveals itself as a divine shield that prevents premature exposure to greater dangers or misdirection. He draws connections between these moments and the broader lessons of spiritual discipline, mindful living, and communal reconciliation he has articulated throughout his speeches, showing that the same attentiveness and patience required to endure personal hardships or maintain health and clarity are equally essential in navigating the challenges of organizational life and community leadership. He recounts the stories of individuals within the Nation of Islam who, confronted by perceived failure or betrayal, were forced to question their assumptions, reconsider strategies, and ultimately grow in ways that would not have been possible in the absence of such trials. This pattern, he suggests, is not unique to one organization, but is a recurring principle in history. Those who endure and reflect on temporary setbacks often emerge stronger, more capable, and better positioned to realize their long-term purpose. By framing temporary decline as divine protection, Farrakhan challenges his audience to adopt a perspective that values patience, discernment, and strategic foresight over immediate gratification or reactionary despair. He emphasizes that understanding this principle requires both humility and reflection, as it is easy to perceive misfortune as punishment or proof of inadequacy. Yet the Quranic parables he cites consistently remind listeners that divine wisdom operates beyond immediate perception. He recounts how leaders who grasp this perspective avoid the pitfalls of frustration and bitterness, instead using difficult moments as opportunities to educate, organize, and fortify their communities, transforming potential discouragement into purposeful action and insight. Farrakhan also bridges this theme to the broader reconciliation and unity he advocates, suggesting that communities fractured by conflict or hindered by historical misunderstandings can interpret their trials not as evidence of failure but as a necessary purification and preparation for collective progress. Through his narrative, the idea of temporary decline becomes intertwined with spiritual growth, communal cohesion, and the disciplined pursuit of both individual and collective potential. He portrays a vision in which challenges, rather than being feared or resented, are embraced as catalysts for empowerment, a framework that encourages leaders and followers alike to remain steadfast, attentive, and faithful to a higher wisdom that guides both personal and communal destiny. In the end, Farrakhan's reflections reveal a profound lesson. What the world interprets as loss or failure may conceal unseen protection, a subtle orchestration that ensures readiness for greater responsibility, influence, and liberation. Through these stories, he frames the trials of the Nation of Islam and, by extension, the struggles of all who seek justice and uplift mentors' opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more unified, demonstrating that resilience, insight, and faith transform adversity into the very foundation upon which lasting progress is built. As the speech draws to a close, Farrakhan's voice rises with a sense of purpose and urgency, leaving the audience with a call that resonates far beyond the walls of the room, reaching into the hearts of every listener. He emphasizes that awakening is not a passive act, but a deliberate, conscious choice, a spiritual reorientation that requires the courage to confront fear, the humility to acknowledge past mistakes, and the wisdom to embrace truth in all its dimensions. In his vision, true liberation begins not with external victories, but within the mind, heart, and spirit, where self-awareness and discipline form the foundation of personal and collective empowerment. He reminds listeners that division and distrust are the tools of those who would keep communities weak and disorganized, and that only by confronting these forces head-on with clarity and unity can a people fully realize their potential. Farrakhan paints a vivid picture of what this awakened community could look like, a people grounded in knowledge, conscious of their history, and committed to the betterment of themselves and their surroundings, capable of building institutions, nurturing leaders, and creating spaces where creativity, justice, and progress thrive. He insists that this transformation requires patience, perseverance, and the willingness to endure hardship, not as punishment, but as spiritual training that strengthens resolve and sharpens judgment. Through his words, the audience is reminded that every struggle faced, every challenge overcome, becomes a stepping stone toward a stronger, more resilient, and self-reliant society. He also urges reconciliation among those who have been divided by ideology, past conflicts, or miscommunication, emphasizing that unity does not demand uniformity, but requires mutual respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to collective upliftment. In this call to action, Farrakhan underscores that spiritual awakening and communal unity are inseparable. One cannot flourish without the other. He envisions a people who not only survive but thrive, who engage the world with confidence, creativity, and a steadfast moral compass, capable of shaping a future that honors both heritage and aspiration. As he concludes, the speech transforms from reflection to a rallying cry, inviting each listener to take personal responsibility for growth, community, and change. Farrakhan's final message is clear: the time for fear, division, and passivity has passed. The path forward lies in embracing truth, discipline, and unity. He extends a heartfelt appeal to those who have followed the Nation of Islam, as well as those who have only recently encountered these teachings, to commit to this vision and actively participate in shaping a society rooted in justice, knowledge, and empowerment. To all of you watching and listening, thank you for taking the time to engage with this important message. Your attention, reflection, and action matter more than you know. If you found value in this story and the lessons shared, please support the channel by liking this video and subscribing, so that more people can access content that inspires thought, reflection, and meaningful change. Together, by awakening, embracing truth, and standing united, we can move closer to the vision of a disciplined, self-aware, and empowered community capable of building a new future filled with hope, purpose, and resilience. Hope, purpose, and resilience. Hope,